A male escort's life is upended when he falls in love with a woman who doesn't know what he does for a living. Eventually, the man has to choose between a comfortable but unhappy life or taking a risk to be with the woman of his dreams. Saygin, a successful male escort, caters to the wealthy women of the city by bringing their intimate fantasies to life. One morning, he hears a commotion in the hotel lobby and finds his best friend and fellow escort, Kado, arguing with a woman by the front desk. She claims that the man began saying lewd innuendos unprompted and gave her his card. When the hotel employee calls security, Saygin diffuses the situation by taking the woman aside and softly asking that she forgive his friend's behavior because his fiancée just left him. In the changing room, the escort reminds his pal that in their line of work, they should always wait for the lady to approach. Kado counters that it's easy for the man to say because he's always fully booked since he has no problems finding clients. Then, Saygin spots the scar on his friend's torso and briefly remembers the tragic incident that caused the injury. To lift his best friend's spirits, the escort says they're buying a tuxedo after his shower. At a fancy New Year's Eve party, the man points out potential clients for Kado, implying that he does his research on the rich women of the city who might be looking for their services. Meanwhile, Serap sees her husband dancing with another woman, so she promptly walks off, briefly locking eyes with the escort. When Saygin walks up the stairs, he catches Nehir when she loses her balance after breaking one of her heels. The grateful lady thanks him for his help and tells him to enjoy the rest of the night. Even though she was supposed to perform tonight, the woman wonders if she can go through with it after ruining her shoe. Later, Nehir sees Saygin trying to play the piano, so the aspiring musician sits on the bench and finishes the rest of the song. Then, she hands the man a drink and asks if he likes fireworks. And he says he used to make up stories in his head about the life accomplishment the person was celebrating to warrant the extravagant display. When he mentions how he hates covers of good songs, she thinks he didn't like her singing earlier, so he teases her that she was okay. Suddenly, Saygin receives a call from Serap telling him to head to the bedroom. Because he enjoyed their conversation, the man asks Nehir to meet him again in 30 minutes. In the bedroom, the eager client immediately wants to do the deed, but the escort calmly explains that her husband is at the party. Then, the woman gives him a watch as a gift, and he asks her what happened. So Serap shares that her husband always complains about back pain in bed, but when he sees a pretty woman at a party, he has no issues dancing. Saygin suggests she get a divorce, but she says her daughter Fulia might not be able to handle it. Eventually, the woman asks the escort to drop all his other clients because she'll take care of his financial needs. Meanwhile, Nehir tells Fulia that she can't perform tonight because she broke her shoe. However, when the friend says she is leaving the party because watching the woman sing was the only reason she went, the aspiring musician begs her to stay, since she wants to see Saygin again. In the bedroom, Serap tells the escort that he deserves more in life than sleeping with women for money. The man thinks she's had too much to drink, so she apologizes and asks why it's so difficult for him to commit to a woman. She wonders if he finds her dull or too old, so the escort assures her that she's beautiful. The client adds that he can live in any house he wants and drive his dream car, and all she asks in return is that he doesn't see anyone else. Soon, Saygin moves into the luxurious house that Serap got for him and he prepares a lavish dinner for her arrival. Minutes later, Kado arrives and marvels at his friend's new abode. To his delight, he learns that the escort already set up his bedroom. Then, Saygin worriedly asks the friend if he's no longer fraternizing with the wrong people, and the latter swears that he's cleaned up his act. Suddenly, they hear Serap's car approaching the house, so Saygin tells Kado to get out. When the woman enters, she opens up her coat to reveal her undergarments, but she quickly covers herself up upon seeing the other man in the room. So the escort pretends that his motorcycle helmet-wearing friend is the pizza delivery guy who was just leaving. Without wasting any time, the pair proceed to the bedroom to make love. Later that night, Kado injects a substance into the side of his body before he dances for his client. Concurrently, Serap tells Saygin that it's her daughter's birthday tomorrow, but she doesn't know how to celebrate it, since Fulia only likes music. She adds that the daughter's best friend is too beautiful, making her insecure. To help with Fulia's confidence, the escort suggests setting up an accidental meetup with his friend whom he promises is a kind and dignified man. At the birthday party, Saygin gives Kado notes about how to charm the clueless client. Later, the escort spots Nehir, who expresses how she didn't appreciate how he stood her up at the New Year's Eve party. The man apologizes and reasons that he had an urgent matter to attend to, but the woman walks away and returns to her table with Fulia. As Kado introduces himself to the ladies, Saygin realizes that Nehir is his client's daughter's best friend, so he calls his pal to the bar. He says he's calling the job off, but the inebriated friend insists he'll charm the introverted client, and the aspiring singer notices their animated conversation. So while Kado Kado approaches Fulya again, the escort apologizes to the amused Nehir for his intoxicated pal's behavior. Later, as Saygin watches the woman sing a ballad on stage, he receives a call from Serap. As the man walks out of the bar, the heartbroken Nehir thinks he doesn't like her singing. She follows him outside and says she can sing a different song if he didn't like the first one. He reasons that he's tired and politely shoots down her subtle signals that she wants to see him again. Before walking away, the man sadly says that there's a lot about him to hate. To drown away his sorrows, the escort heads to a different bar down the street. Hours later, he returns to the party and considers telling Nehir the truth. However, when he doesn't find the words, the annoyed woman stands up and leaves. Outside, the inebriated woman throws up on the escort's coat, so he takes her home to take care of her. Later, Nehir asks the man to stay with her as she sleeps on the couch, and he sees her write down imaginary fireworks in her notebook. The next morning, Serap walks in on the escort sleeping next to the woman. Suddenly, Saygin wakes up and realizes it was just a dream. Then, Kado arrives and admonishes his friend for allowing the lady to walk to the bus stop in the rain. So the man drives to the bus stop, but the woman refuses to get in the car until he answers her questions. She asks if he's married or has a girlfriend, and he says no. Eventually, Nehir gets in the vehicle and asks what he wants from her since it seems he's interested but refuses to open up. Instead of answering her question, he asks if she wants to watch a movie. That evening, after driving the woman home, Saygin receives a call from Serap but chooses to ignore it. Meanwhile, the apprehensive Kado participates in a couple's unusual lovemaking. Later, when the escort returns to the house, the client asks why he didn't answer her calls, but he brushes off her query. So the woman mentions how much her daughter enjoyed the party. To show her gratitude, she asks if there's anything he wants, such as a motorcycle or to go on vacation. However, to Serap's surprise, Saygin says he already has everything he needs and he just wants to rest. Seeing the confused look on the client's face, the man clarifies that moving to the new house has been tiring and he needs to catch up on his sleep. Before she leaves, Serap hands over Kado's payment and tells the escort to inform his friend that he's forbidden from interacting with Fulya again. When the friend arrives, he expresses his disgust at his latest session with the couple. Saygin reminds him that he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to and just walk away. However, the incensed man implies that he has to take these kinds of clients because he doesn't have a gentlemanly reputation unlike his pal. To appease Kado, the escort hands him the payment and tells him that he mustn't communicate with Fulya again. The friend thinks it's unfair since Saygin still gets to see Nehir despite his promise to Serap. The next day, the mother learns that Fulya and the escort made dinner plans for tomorrow, going against her stern instructions that the man cease all communications with her daughter. Later, Serap drops by the house to order Kado to stop speaking to Fulya. Then, she asks Saygin if something's going on because he seemed distant lately, and the man's vague answer only further annoys her. After the client leaves, the friend tells the escort that he can't continue playing with both women, and if he likes Nehir, they need to give back the house and the car and figure out another way to make a living. As a callous response, Saygin reminds Kado that he finished the session with a couple last night because he needed money, implying that he's a hypocrite. That evening, the man has a nightmare about a role-playing session with Serap interspersed with awful memories from his childhood. He wakes up to an urgent phone call from Nehir who says there was a fire in her dormitory. Saygin immediately drives over and embraces the woman, who assures him that she's fine. Because it's too late to call Fulya, the man suggests she stay at his house for the time being. Later, he shares that the reason why he was worried about her was because his mother died in a house fire years ago. Saygin adds that he was at school when it happened and Kado tried to save his mother, but he was too small to carry her out. After sleeping next to each other on the couch, the escort drives the aspiring musician to school. Before walking away, the woman kisses Saygin on the cheek and says she'll see him later. When the man calls Serap hoping to talk about their relationship, the woman says she's at the hospital. Later, the client confides that the doctor thinks she might have cervical cancer, so the escort stays by her side as she gets additional testing. After class, Nehir tries to call Saygin, but he doesn't answer. That evening, the escort helps the client put on her clothes, and she asks him what he wanted to talk about, but he says it's not important. Meanwhile, Kado receives a message from Fulya, but because he promised he wouldn't speak to her again, he chooses to distract himself by going to a club. Inside, he dances with a masked woman and injects an illicit substance onto his body. Suddenly, the man starts feeling dizzy and collapses on the bathroom floor. Concurrently, the annoyed Nehir sees the apologetic Saygin outside her dormitory. At first, she tries to ignore him, but after he sings at the top of his lungs in the pouring rain, she finally talks to him. The woman points out that she waited for him in the cold for an hour, so he jokes that his getting drenched in the rain makes them even. The man says he had to go to the hospital for personal reasons, and and she wonders if he's just gonna break her heart again. Then, Nehir asks if he's ever sung for anyone else before, and he reveals he's never sung at all. Saygin adds that he wants to sing her song, Imaginary Fireworks, in the future, so the smitten woman kisses his lips. Soon, they return to his house to make her favorite dessert together and watch a movie. As Nehir wanders around the house, the man finds her in a room and asks if she doesn't trust him. After she gives a cheeky response, they share a kiss, but Saygin pulls away and apologizes. Later, the aspiring singer asks if she's the problem, so the man admits she's all he thinks about. He adds that he forces himself to try and forget about her because she's all the things he's supposed to stay away from. Eventually, the pair finally make love in front of the fireplace. Meanwhile, Serap tries to call the escort, but he doesn't notice the phone buzzing on the table. The client overhears her husband flirting with another woman at the party, so she walks out onto the poolside area and throws her drinks in the man's face. Fulya can't believe what her mother just did, and Serap giggles as she walks back into the house. Meanwhile, Kado returns to the house and sees the clothless couple sleeping on the couch. Moments later, Saygin asks his friend what's inside his bag, and the latter says it's none of his business. Concerned the man might be getting involved in shady dealings again, the escort follows him out of the house and grabs the bag. Concurrently, Fulya tells her mother about how Nehir's messing up her life for a man she barely knows. She continues that her friend's been skipping school and she's worried the university might take her scholarship away. Eventually, the daughter mentions that the guy Nehir's been seeing is good friends with Kado, leading Serap to deduce that it's Saygin. Then, Fulya commends her mother for standing up for herself and says maybe her father will finally come to his senses. After seeing that the bag contains illicit substances, the escort admonishes Kado and says that if he wants to take his own life via his vices, he should do it somewhere else. So the friend reminds him that it isn't his house and he'll have to find another way to make money once his looks fade. In the living room, the woman pretends she's asleep but overhears the men's conversation. The next day, Saygin drops the woman off at school, and to his surprise, he sees his client dropping Fulya off as well. Nehir says she'll introduce him to her friend's mother, so the apprehensive man realizes he has no choice but to pretend he's never met Serap. When the clueless singer introduces the two, they shake hands and the older woman compliments the escort's car, subtly reminding him where it came from. When the uncomfortable man excuses himself to leave, Serap suggests that they all have dinner together soon so they can get to know each other better. In class, Nehir asks Fulya why she doesn't like Saygin, so the latter says she has an intuitive feeling that he's hiding a dark secret. Later, the troubled singer tells her friend that she overheard Kado saying that Saygin doesn't own the house, and the latter theorizes that there might be another woman. Meanwhile, the escort tells the client that he'll empty the house tomorrow and thanks her for her generosity. The woman scoffs and asks if he always swindles mothers and daughters, but he insists that he didn't know Nehir was her daughter's best friend. She asks if he's in love with the aspiring singer, and his silence affirms her suspicions. Then, the man asks Serap for one last favor, to not tell Nehir that he's an escort because he doesn't think she can handle the truth. Furious, the woman thinks he chose the singer because of her youth, but he insists it isn't the reason. She reminds him that she asked him to do two things, to never deceive her and to not do the same thing her husband does. Saygin says he was gonna tell her but decided to delay the conversation due to her illness. Betrayed, the client slaps the escort and expresses her disgust at him bringing the other woman to the house she paid for. So Serap tells the man that if he doesn't end things with Nehir, she'll tell the singer the truth. Then, she answers a call from the clinic telling her to come by as soon as possible to speak to the doctor about her latest test results. As her final request, the anxious client asks the escort to hold her one last time. When Saygin doesn't answer her call, the aspiring singer stops by the house and wonders why Serap's car is in the driveway. Moments later, she catches the pair cuddling in the bedroom and realizes her friend's mother was the other woman. Serap tries to explain that their situation has ended and that they're saying their goodbyes as friends, but the heartbroken Nehir deduces that the man's an escort and storms out. Concurrently, Kado sleeps with a female client behind her husband's back, and when the man catches them in the act, a scuffle ensues. When the woman sees the escort beating up her husband, she orders him to stop, and Kado stumbles out of the house. The next day, Saygin finds an empty canister on the floor next to his friend's lifeless body and realizes that he must have taken too many powerful painkillers last night and perished in his sleep. Later that day, the man buries Kado's body, and in a fit of anger, uses the shovel to destroy his car. Years ago, Saygin returned from school to find that their home burned down. Kado tried to comfort him and remorsefully admitted that he couldn't save his mother. In the present, Nehir sees the tormented man in the graveyard and tearfully walks away. 3 years later, Saygin left his escort profession for good following Kado's death and eventually opened a restaurant. One evening, Nehir's band stops for a meal at the establishment and she recognizes the man's voice. After an awkward but delightful conversation catching up, Saygin says she doesn't have to pay for the food. So the woman takes out a ticket from her bag and invites him to her very first show. She teases that he doesn't have to worry because she won't sing any covers since she'll perform original compositions. Before she leaves, Nehir says she hopes he can make it, and he promises he'll be there. Then, Saygin smiles when he sees that she named her first show Imaginary Fireworks.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.